Sooner or later in a family, the enemy tries to come in and says, I have a order, DoorDash right here. Take it. It's bitter herbs, and it's coming in your family. And at that moment, you have a decision to make. You can either let it chew on you, or you can take the bitter herbs and mix it with the sweet lamb and ingest it and take it and say, it's not going to turn me bitter, it's going to turn me better. And by God's grace, all things are working together for the good. So I trust him. It's ultimately going to get me to my place of destiny and purpose, just like it did Jesus. Actually, it'll make you stronger. Actually, it'll make you greater. Have you ever been served the side dish of bitterness? When something happens in your family or in your life, and anger could get in your spirit, but you have to make a decision. And the remedy to it is to mix the bitter dish with the sweet Lamb of God. Ephesians 4 put it this way: be angry and sin not. It's okay to get angry, but he said, don't let that anger get in your spirit. Don't let that anger turn you into somebody that destroys every relationship because you couldn't get over what somebody did to you, and it bleeds over into every other relationship. He said, be angry and sin not, and then he tells you how to do it. He says, here's how you do that. Let not the sun go down on your wrath, lest you give place to the devil. That word place there is foothold in the Greek. That literally, when you get angry and you don't deal with it quickly, but you let it just get into your spirit, and anger becomes part of how you feel all the time. It's part of, oh, you can't stand that person. What happens is, the Bible said it's dangerous because it gives place to the devil. And the word place is foothold, that literally you have just opened the door by not allowing that to come out of you, and the devil puts his foot in the door. And he says to every demon, go in and tear this house all to pieces, because they will not forgive one another. We have our foot in the door. Come on in and do your work. Would you like to shut the door in the devil's face? Would you like to give him no jurisdiction, no topography over your family, over your home, or over your life? What happens is, when you get angry and stay angry, you open the door and the devil puts his foot in. But the moment that you decide, I don't appreciate it, I don't agree with it, it doesn't mean you're agreeing with what somebody did that was wrong. But what it means is, I am not going to allow it to get in my spirit. Be angry and sin not. Let it go. Have you ever heard of a man by the name of Ahithophel? You probably haven't. Let me tell you about him. He was in King David's administration, and he was one of his chief counselors. And he was there for 25 years serving the great King David. But it's interesting that when Absalom, David's son, by hostile takeover, ran David off of the throne and out of town and scurrying for his life, the first person to defect from David's administration instantly to join Absalom's team and administration was this guy named Ahithophel. Why? Because he was the grandfather of Bathsheba. And you remember when David walked out on the balcony and saw Bathsheba and lusted after her and sent for her and had relationship with her and got her pregnant, and then to cover it up, killed her husband. All of that was watched by the grandfather in his inner circle. And that began to simmer inside of him in anger. And when Absalom launches his takeover coup, it was this man who was first to defect and join the team of Absalom. And he gave the advice, this is interesting, to David. You know what you ought to do, David? You ought to take his wives out on the porch and you ought to abuse them in front of the whole city as an act of shaming King David. That advice came from Bathsheba's grandfather, and that's exactly what Absalom did. Why? Because for 25 years, he had been seething with anger and offense and hurt. And now you hurt my family. You killed my son-in-law. You hurt my children on that side that grew up. I'm without their daddy. And you did that to my granddaughter. Do to his family what he did to my family. But interestingly, a few chapters later, this same man, Ahithophel, who could not get over it, who would not put on the coat of love, and I know it was heavy, and I know it was hard, because when you decide to simmer in hate and bitterness and unforgiveness and offense, you are committing spiritual suicide. And it may not happen in a day or a month, but there's no way that you can continue to let something just simmer in you. For 25 years, it burned in him. When the serpent bit the Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 19, he had a decision. It didn't just strike him, it chewed on him. It was chewing and releasing the poison. I know it was because the Bible said he had to shake it off of his arm just to get rid of it. And he shook it into the fire. The point is this: when somebody hurts you, have you ever had things chew on you? 2 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and it's just chewing on you. I can't believe they said that. I can't believe they told that. I can't believe they lied. I can't believe it's just chewing on you. And you have to make a decision. Are you going to let it poison you? Are you going to let it destroy every relationship? Or you can get over it. You can put on the overcoat of love and you can make allowances for one another and say, well, God, you gave me grace and forgiveness, so I'm going to give them grace and forgiveness, but I'm not going to live in the bitterness of that situation. I never will forget Brother Tenney telling me one time when we were talking about a missionary and his movement and his denomination. And he said, this man is a legend. He's a godly old man of God. And he had established hundreds and hundreds of churches on the mission field. And he had faced almost everything you can imagine. And he was in somewhere in Central America in the jungle, deep jungle. And they did not know English, of course, nor did they even know Spanish. They had their own dialect and everything in this particular area. And so he comes into this area, this veteran missionary, mighty man of God. And as he's preaching and building a church, the first church in that area, and reaching that new people with the gospel, they brought to him a girl who was completely demon-possessed, a woman who was completely demon-possessed. It took 3 or 4 men to just control her. They said they literally put her in chains because she was so violent and so self-destructing to herself. And so when they brought her, he said, this man told Pastor Tenney or Bishop Tenney, and he told me this story, and this is what he said. He said, the demons cried out in perfect English through that native woman, don't teach the people to forgive. Don't teach the people to forgive. Isn't it something that out of all of the things demons fear, the one thing that they dreaded the most is if that preacher would stand up and tell the people, you must forgive your enemies. And if you will do it, you will break Satan's control and Satan's power off of your family, off of your marriage, off of your future. That's important. Off of your future when you release that forgiveness and that bitterness.